to this meeting of the Swansea Bay City Deal Joint Committee on Thursday the 10th of July. We'll begin with apologies for absence, and I know we've received apologies from Chris Moore, and Stephen Aldridge-Jones will join in his place. Professor Paul Boyle from Swansea University. I'm not sure if we got a Swansea University colleague with us instead. And from Jan Williams of the Swansea Bay University Health Board. So we'll record those apologies, but I'll just ask, are there any further apologies from anyone today?
Dr. Neil Wooden as well, Chair.
Thank you, Al. We'll record that. If there are no further apologies, declarations of interest, just to remind colleagues, item 11, members of the City Deal Programme Office, Management Office will need to leave for that item. Are there any other declarations? No. Okay. We'll move on then to the minutes of the previous joint committee from the 27th of May 2025. I've had no requests for amendments, but would take them this morning if there are any. If not, happy to move them as a true record. Could I ask for a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, John. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Those are agreed. On to announcements of the Chair. I've just got one announcement this morning, which is a correction that's needed to the previously published PO business case that was approved by the Joint Committee recently. It relates to the status table in the management case and executive summary. There is a bit of information that we'll need to update there, which will be circulated round to all members as part of the minutes so that they can see the full detail. But the headline is the number of projects completed is actually 6, not 9. So that will be amended accordingly. And the relevant information that underpins that amendment will also be circulated so members have clarity on that. So again, apologies for the slight correction, but we're making that today. Moving on then to public questions. I don't believe we've received any public questions today. Just check.
No, Chair.
Okay, no, there's no members of the public present. So we'll move on then to the digital infrastructure update, and a great pleasure to welcome Rebecca Llewellyn, who's going to take us through this item. Rebecca.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to make sure I can share my screen with you. If somebody could just, I can't see you when I'm sharing, so if you could just let me know if that's coming
that's
through.
Sharing great, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much, everyone. Nice to be back and see you all again. I'm going to try and be as succinct as possible, obviously, this morning, covering off these points, but I'm conscious we've only got about 15-20 minutes, and we are a massive programme with a lot going on at the moment, so it will very much be a whistle-stop tour of the headlines, but I just want to offer out if there is anything you'd like more information on or any more detailed discussion on, please by all means reach out to myself or any member of our team after today, and we'd be more than happy to provide you with that information or have a further conversation to cover off anything else you'd like to know. Oh, my button stopped working. So just a very quick reminder, we are an infrastructure-focused programme, as the name suggests, delivering improvements to fixed and mobile connectivity across the region. We support all 4 counties and all 8 partners of the City Deal in equity. But we fully realise that whilst our focus is on deploying infrastructure, it's the adoption and utilisation of that infrastructure that really is the valuable part. So our programme aspirations reflect this, and we aim to deliver these aspirations or achieve these aspirations through the delivery of 3 work streams funded from £25 million of City Deal funding, which is split between 20.5 million capital and 4.5 revenue funding. So since the programme business case was approved in 2020 and we formally started work, we've seen significant improvements in both fixed and mobile connectivity across the region. Is that showing properly? It's a bit funny on my screen. Sorry, let's try that again. There we go. So full fibre figures, so this is gigabit capable fibre to the premise. So the holy grail of your internet connectivity, if you like, has grown year on year. Naturally, there is, as you'd expect to see, a bit of a lag in some of the more rural areas where it's more complex to deploy this infrastructure, but I'll come on to some of the ways we're looking to address that later on. However, super fast connectivity, so plus 30 meg, which used to be sort of the flagship aim for connectivity, is over 90% in all authority areas now, which is also significantly increased since the start of the programme. So there is improvements in the round, but we're always obviously chasing the holy grail. Likewise, mobile connectivity from at least one MNO is up to nearly 100% across the whole of the region, which is fantastic news. And it does continue to improve from all 3.5/4, depends where we're at in that merger with 3 operators. But again, as you probably expect to see in some of the more rural areas, again, with more challenging topologies, that does remain slightly lower from all 4. But again, I'll discuss some ways that that's trying to be addressed later on. So that moves me nicely into our rural work stream, which will come as no surprise, is concerned with connecting the most poorly served communities across our region. So this work stream is led by my colleague Deidre Oliver and includes our biggest single capital project spend of circa 10 million, just shy of 10 million pounds capital funding. This contract was awarded to BT Openreach in May of this year. Significant amount of background work, data crunching, etc., liaising with governments and commercial partners to ensure that we were targeting the right premises at the right places. So a massive amount of work's gone on in the preparation of that. The project, which we call Better Broadband Infill Project, will serve over 15,000 premises across the region, which currently have sub-super fast connectivity, so less than 30 gigabit, which in my world is essentially none, and are not within any existing commercial or government intervention plans. BT have also committed, as a result of this contract, to build out commercially off the back of it to serve an additional 236 premises around the network route, which doesn't sound like a lot, I appreciate, but if you think about, and I'll show you a map now, the geographical makeup of some of these properties, that is quite significant, because there are some quite remote properties involved. So once the network is built, it'll allow these premises and surrounding properties to order gigabit capable services from a range of ISP providers that work with BT and Openreach. So that's really exciting news for those communities. As I mentioned, this is the map just to give a bit of a visual representation of where the project will build. So within the budget, we recognised that we were never going to address all of the properties that fell in the category. I think there was just over 2,300 in my mind, but around that, premises that fell within the eligibility of this project. So bidders were asked to address as many premises as they possibly could within that circa £10 million budget, but we required a minimum target of 40% coverage for each local authority area and a total of 60% regional coverage as a bare minimum, both of which have been exceeded by the successful bid. So that's really good news there. The next work stream in the programme, which I lead on, is the Connected Places work stream. So this is all about really future-proofing the digital networks of our public sector partners across the region, so we can continue to provide the services in the way and at the speed and to the effectiveness that our communities and citizens require. But also there's a large part of this that is about stimulating private sector investment in some of those key economic growth zones where commercial appetite is a bit stronger and where it's commercially viable for telecoms industry to build out themselves. So we have 3 capital projects delivered under this work stream. The first is what we call full fibre infrastructure build. So this is an upgrade of 69 public sector sites across the region and across our regional partners, from copper connections to full fibre gigabit capable connectivity. It's delivered through the PSBA, which, for those of you who aren't familiar, is a strategic partnership between BT, Openreach and Welsh Government that supports all public sector connectivity across Wales. So all lit service, public service connectivity across Wales is delivered through the PSBA network, sort of a broadband aggregator for public sector in Wales. So this project is due to complete in September, although we are hopeful that it will be in the next few weeks, actually. So we're hopefully ahead on that one. And then we also have 2 dark fibre projects under the Connected Places work stream. So for those who aren't familiar, dark fibre is kind of what it says on the tin. It's unlit fibre, so it's basically a dormant fibre, but it is also a critical underlying infrastructure because essentially dark fibre is theoretically limitless in terms of capacity and speed. They're dedicated networks, they're dedicated point-to-point connections for that business or organisation, or in this case, our public sector partners. So these networks are extremely secure and offer extremely heavy data transfer, data traffic, and provide really critical resilience and disaster recovery capabilities. They also offer the opportunity for scale and scale without compromise. So, for example, some of the universities that are involved in this project are using the dedicated dark fibre networks to undertake heavy data research, where they've got to move heavy data at speed between different faculties within the universities. And they can do this over this network really effectively, but without compromising the core network day-to-day service delivery. So it's a really useful piece of transformative kit that should also then allow us to scale our services going forward to meet increasing demands without having to recommission service continually. So the projects, the dark fibre projects, are split geographically. This is primarily because of the different commercial appetites and the different telecoms interests in different areas. So the first one to be awarded was the Dark Fibre East project, which, no surprise, covers the eastern part of the region, so primarily Neath, Port Talbot and Swansea, and was awarded to Virgin Media O2 last year. The project completes in December this year, but there's only actually 5 sites remaining. Those are on hold due to partner requirements. Either the buildings aren't complete or there's embargoes in place during the summer period. So those will be picked up soon after those finish. And hopefully, again, we should be finishing this project by October of this year ahead of schedule. So very positive there. And then the second is Dark Fibre Carmarthenshire. So this was awarded to ITS in March this year, and will support the council, the colleges and the health board with connectivity. It's quite exciting. ITS are a new supplier to the region and predominantly to Wales. They do have a small presence in Newport into the data centre there, they backhaul. But yeah, it's very exciting to attract new investment and new providers into the region, and particularly from a Connected Places perspective, where we're trying to stimulate that economic growth and drive that competition and options for people. So, and they're also a business to business orientated supplier. So for obviously our business sector and industrial sectors, it's a really exciting introduction to the region. So they're in the process of surveying and planning at this point, but we will be concluding that by the end of next year. And then thirdly, we have our next generation wireless work stream, which is again a Ronseal. It is all about enhancing, accelerating rollout of wireless networks, including mobile coverage and a particular focus on 5G evolution and adoption in the region. So this is led by my colleague Gareth Thomas. And the capital element of this work stream is a 5G innovation fund, which we've established, which supports projects to deliver trials, test beds, use cases aligned with both the strategic growth sectors of the City Deal, but also wider regional economic development priorities and objectives. So the fund is open to public and private sector applications. There's a maximum 1.6 million per award, and there is a maximum 60% intervention rate for each project. To date, we've awarded 1 project to the campuses, who I believe are on the agenda later. And we are in the process of awarding a second bid to a private sector organisation. Unfortunately, I was hoping I'd be able to announce that today, but we're still in the sort of legal bits, but hope to announce that imminently. We've also had expressions of interest from 3 other projects within the region, both inside and outside of the City Deal portfolio itself. So a nice variety of interest in the fund. So we recognise as a programme that naturally £25 million to address what are some of the most challenging parts of digital connectivity is, quite limited in the impact directly it's going to have. But we completely recognise that connectivity can't be achieved in isolation, regardless of who you are. So connectivity through collaboration is not just a strapline for us as a programme. It is very much a way of working, and we engage daily, if not weekly, with governments, with telecoms industries, with partners and other providers to try and achieve our aspirations. And under the Next Generation Wireless workstream, there's two really strong examples of this, where we've actively enabled and supported the SRN programme, so the Shared Rural Network, which is a UK government and industry partnership programme, which has recently concluded actually, to improve mobile connectivity from all 4 mobile network operators in some of the most rural areas of the UK. So it's a UK-wide scheme. In our region, we have benefited from 22 new masts, and 39 upgraded masts, which reflects an investment of circa £15 million. So that's really good for the region, and obviously those coverage uplifts that you saw in the previous slide are probably largely attributable to that. We also then have, so when it comes to mobile connectivity, there's kind of a dual challenge. So there's the coverage challenge, which the SRN has done a lot to address, so actually being able to get any signal at all. But then there's also a capacity challenge, so we kind of split the interventions to address those two sides of the coin. So I'm sure we've all been in an event or been in an arena or something, and we've got 4 bars of signal but nothing will work, and that's because of the capacity and the congestion on the network. So one of the key ways we're looking to address this is through a programme of public sector asset reuse. So this is working with industry, telecoms, and primarily local authority partners, but there's no reason we couldn't be doing work with other private public sector partners to deploy what are known as small cells on council-owned assets. So that, but essentially small cells act as a booster, think of it that way, in terms of boosting the network coverage. And Swansea, as you'd expect, as our sort of most urban area, is leading this piece of work for the region. They have what are known as open access agreements in place with 2 neutral hosts currently, Ontix and Freshwave, and they're working with other neutral hosts. So neutral hosts are essentially a third party company that builds and manages mobile infrastructure on behalf of the mobile network operators. So they basically install the kit and allow the operators then to put their own connectivity and kit on those. So it reduces the congestion of the small cells that are deployed by enabling MNOs to share them. So it's more aesthetically pleasing and more aesthetically appropriate. So the learning then from Swansea will be transferred across to other areas, and because it's not just an urban as in a city centre challenge. We've obviously also got big pockets of tourism areas where we see peaks and troughs. So the normal connectivity that is okay in places like Tenby, don't really. If anyone's ever been to the long course or the Ironman weekend, as I have, it's frustrating that you miss your athlete because you can't get the connectivity to work. So there's challenges across the region on that congestion front. We also have established a digital innovation network known as the LoRaWAN network. So uses LoRaWAN gateways, which is a very sort of low frequency sensor network, essentially, to enable local authorities and other public sector partners to trial smart usage of sensors. So we've had trials for things like waste management, water safety, lifebuoy monitoring, antisocial behaviour projects, footfall in town centres. And it's really to enable our public services to use data in a smarter way to evolve services that are more effective or improved effectiveness across the region, and they can use that data to make informed data-driven decisions. So all of that work has been made possible, as the rest of the work across the piece, to stimulate investment and economic growth through the revenue funded element of our work stream. So as you can see, we have quite a full team. We're all in place now, which is great to see. So as well as myself and my 2 fellow project managers, as I discussed earlier, at a regional level, who support all of the central pieces of work and the capital funding projects and the revenue distribution. We have a dedicated centralised comms and engagement support officer who is helping us to highlight opportunities and celebrate success, but also developing content like educational animations for the public to be able to use to understand some of these really complex projects and initiatives sometimes, and try and make them tangible and meaningful, because again, ultimately that's why we're doing it. Developing websites, press releases, helping us to host 2 annual events, which have been widely recognised across industry and government for being kind of a flagship approach. There's not any other regions in Wales that do that, so that's been very welcomed. But then we also have 2 posts that we fund in each local authority area. So our digital connectivity and relationship managers, because we absolutely love a really big complex title. They are our sort of strategic role in a respect. They act as the single point of contact for all internal departments who are involved in mobile connectivity deployments, as well as a front door for telecoms, government, industry, to try and essentially make the process of deploying infrastructure as seamless as possible. It's a very complicated process. There's a lot of people involved. So their primary role is known as barrier busting, but I'm not a fan of the term because it has a negative connotation. So maybe we'll try and think of a better, more positive way of describing it. But that's essentially their role, and they've been recognised as critical by UK and Welsh government, to a point where we and industry, we were actually shortlisted as finalists for the barrier removal awards, in Connected Britain last year, which is the UK-wide national conference for all things telecoms and connectivity. So we were shortlisted for that because of these roles, and they're seen as so fundamentally important in terms of deploying infrastructure in the most seamless way possible. So that was great to see that recognition. And then we also have our business engagement officers, whose focus is a bit more operational in terms of working with communities and businesses to help them access better broadband through things like voucher schemes or any other interventions that may be available at the time from governments or from providers. And they can help advise on what alternative technologies may be able to be accessed for those who are not receiving the connectivity they need. So finally, then, in 2021, we commissioned Farpoint to undertake annual benefits impact assessments to the programme, so we can ensure both that we're continuing to deliver, but that we're achieving our objectives and our outcomes, and also then identifying anywhere where we could do more or need to improve. Unfortunately, we're always a lag behind of about 12 to 18 months in producing these reports. So the latest is for 23-24, and that's because we're dependent on national data sets and when they're released. So that's a bit frustrating for us, but yeah, that's sort of beyond our control. So to date, as a programme, we've achieved significant investment from both public and private sector investments. It's increased year on year, totaling 107.7 million to 2024. So that's fantastic news. We've, as we can see, the private sector investment has outweighed the public sector investment to date, which is great news from an economic growth perspective. And we expect to continue to see investment from both going forward. However, we do expect that trend to kind of level out a bit more. So there's a lot of investment already happened in those commercially viable areas, and as we see that maybe drop off and that opportunity from providers drop off because that's being built, we expect to see then an increase in government interventions from things like Project Gigabit, you may have heard of, is a massive UK government programme, and also Welsh Government have a very hard to reach programme that they're looking to deliver in the next few years, which will address then the gaps, and the gaps are in those very difficult, complex connectivity challenged areas. So yeah, so we expect that to continue, but we expect maybe a bit more of alignment. Last year, we also undertook a mid-term GVA impact assessment to ensure that we were on target for delivering our GVA targets, which suggests that we will have a projected impact of 341.7 million over the course of the whole programme, which is actually an increase from the original business case projection of 318 million. So again, hopefully very positive if we can continue to deliver at pace. So yeah, as I said, connectivity through collaboration is what it's all about. It's all about working with yourselves, working with the industry, and working with private telecoms sector and governments to get the connectivity that we all need and value. So as I said, extremely whistle-stop tour, so apologies, that was very, very quick and a lot to take on board. But as I say, happy to take any questions now or to pick anything up with anybody offline for any further detail.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's really, really good run through there. And as you say, a heck of a lot going on with some really important impacts. I really like the fact that we've now got some really good connectivity across all 4 local authorities, which is really, really important in terms of the progress we're making. Because not so long ago, we had major not spots everywhere, which we seem to have made some good progress on. So yeah, no, thank you for that. Some really good stuff in there. Steve, did you want to come in first?
Oh, yes, please. Pleased to meet you, Rebecca, and thank you for that whistle-stop tour. Digital infrastructure is so vitally important for the reasons you've given, and it's great to see the investment from public and private sectors because we know and you won't get everywhere. I was picking up on some of the points you were raising about the Holy Grail and even 30 megabits a second, is as we move forward is not acceptable. Well, let me tell you what I got. They're all used to this by now, everybody on this call, on every meeting I'm in. I'm on 6 megabytes a second. That is my speed. And only 200 yards away from me is 100 megabits a second in a house on the same plane. And it's a BT OpenReach, an investment that wasn't there. And actually, I've had an email now saying they're hoping to get to us by the end of 2026. So the point I wanted to ask and make is that, because I've been a councillor 17 years, but a leader 3, is that everything is about numbers. Everything is about population. Everything's driven in that way by our governments and obviously the profit margins and everything else that comes into it. But we mustn't forget that rural wards, because that's what I am, and I'm in a village of 7 sisters. We've got businesses there. We've got health wards there. We've got all very important and intricate parts of not just the community. Well, when we try to invest in these in-house building, we've lost our industrial revolution, of course. But if we are changing it into modern day working, they're going to have the connectivity before they'd even look at coming there. And that's the point I try to make to Welsh Government and ministers and cabinet secretaries, is that while we understand the money got to be shared out and it's got to make a difference and the outcomes then, they've got to be shown, but you can't leave behind the opportunities to grow the rural communities. We talked earlier about transport, but that's my whole point. It's all part of that picture, but unless you are able to do what you need to do in those localities, which is hugely infrastructure and digitalization, then we're going to be staying as retirement valleys or homes where people will just come and buy a house because it's cheaper, and have no economic benefit into the local shops, etc. So I've gone off on a tangent there, but I think it all does come around to what I'm trying to say is that we got to keep on looking at these rural wards and the far-reaching areas, and I know a lot of farms as well. I do get it all, but we got to drive it as well. If we don't do it as politicians, we're asking for your support and help as well. So I'll shut up there then. Thank you.
No, thanks, Steve. Look, it's as usual a real-world example of how you can be just a few feet away from 100 meg connection, and that's exactly, I think, as Rebecca's outlined, the policy and the progress we're making in terms of trying to make sure we take those out to the region. But you're right, Steve. I think the economics of it do mean that you deliver the core networks first, where the biggest populations are. And you, like a tree, you move out through the branches to the leaves, and then hopefully you get entire connections. we're not there yet. But no, I think your example, which I know you've raised a few times, Steve, is a really good one to understand that you're not far away from really good connectivity. It's just that last little bit that needs to put in to make sure we all get the economic benefit of the new networks that are in place. But Rebecca, sorry, anything you wanted to respond to Steve on that?
No, I think it's it's a challenge that we face daily on the project in working with communities, with businesses, with having that broader oversight of the economic opportunities across. You mentioned farms. We're doing a piece of work with a few farms because there's massive opportunities for farming as an industry and a sector to benefit from digital applications, but without the connectivity, they can't run them. So it's something we're very familiar with. We're very passionate about. I actually live in a rural area myself as well, so I share it from a personal perspective, but it is one of those challenging areas, and I think there's a lot of work that could be done and maybe should be done from that sort of fourth utility perspective. Essentially, homes in themselves, never mind businesses, are going to run on digital as we move forward. There's no way around that. And care and supporting communities, as well as those economic opportunities in rural areas from a tourism perspective, from a business perspective, it's all linked to digital. You think you even pay, I haven't had cash in my hand, I don't think, for probably about 6 years. So if I went to a rural business and they weren't able to process my card payment, they'd lose my business. So, it's something we're very conscious of. And we are working with the governments, with the industry to try and do our best to move that forward. But all the support, obviously, from people like yourselves is critical to ensuring that we're all working together to address that agenda.
Thank you, Rebecca. John?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I'm a man of few words, as you know, but I totally echo what Steve is saying there. When I live on the outskirts of the metropolis of Pembroke here, population 5,000, and my internet, I'm not very technical, but it comes off a wire off a lamppost and flaps in the wind, but it just about works. But but the point is, isn't it, rural areas, both within obviously Eastport Talbot, obviously down in Carmarthenshire there, and Pembrokeshire, we have to keep our populations in. We've got declining populations in a number of areas, more elderly population. And we talk about connectivity, we talk about roads, we talk about rail, all of which is important. But to get the digital connectivity in is absolutely crucial, isn't it? Because we're going to attract businesses, more people are working in a hybrid way as well now, working from home. It's absolutely vitally important. So I was very keen to hear about the infill project you highlighted there. I think that's really positive. A couple of dots up in the Angle Peninsula there, and obviously around Pembroke and Pembroke Dock, Colchester, those areas. The point I'm making is let's keep pushing with the rural as well, because I think that's absolutely vitally important. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you, John. Anybody else on these points or anything that Rebecca went through? If not, Rebecca, thank you again for the update and for the work you and the teams are doing. It is having a significant impact, and I think, as John alluded to, really connectivity these days is as important as water, electricity, gas. It's a service that people expect, and we should be continuing to do all we can to make sure that people, wherever they live, have a decent internet connection, because otherwise we won't get the jobs growth, we don't get the communities growing in the way that we want them to. So yeah, thank you very much, Rebecca, for that, and look forward to welcoming you back again in due course for an update in a few months' time.
Brilliant. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. So that was for noting. We'll move now then on to item 7, which is the portfolio quarterly monitoring update. And I'll call John in to give us a run through of this. John?
Thanks, Chair. So Q1 narrative update, this is between April and June. It's probably worth noting at this point that the financial monitoring will come to the next board meeting in October, I think it is, or September, October, because the timing of the meetings didn't allow for the update of the financials in time. But in terms of narrative, I'll start with the portfolio level stuff, as I always do, starting with the red, amber, green status table. The only thing to note really is that Pentra Owl finances increased to amber from green. That's largely down to the future funding models for the components in future zones around assisted living and the hotel phases being explored. In terms of portfolio level risks and issues, there's no change, Chair, on those. The only one I'd probably highlight of the ones of the issue is the in-year variance. So we did have quite a large in-year variance last year with all explanations for all of them. But what myself and Stephen Aldred-Jones are currently doing are working with all projects and programs to look at accurately forecasting, or as accurately forecast, future planned spend. And we've already met with over half of the projects to incorporate that into the Q1 financials. In terms of portfolio benefits, we've had an incremental change on jobs created. It went from 896 to 912, largely down to Campus's project. And investment, as I said, because the Q1 financials aren't available yet, that remains at 536 million as of Q4 last financial year. Chair, I'll canter quickly through some highlights of the projects. I'm not going to cover digital infrastructure. I don't think I could add to what Bex has already done in the comprehensive update for that. But if I start with support innovation, low carbon growth, the Bay Technology Centre is now at 81% occupied. There's a number of leads progressing, so hopefully they'll be up to towards 100% very soon. The Advanced Manufacturing Production Facility and the Skills Centre associated with it, they've now acquired the land, so that's complete. There has been, since the report, £12.5 million awarded from the Tata Steel Transition Board Fund, so that can help move the production facility and Net Zero Centre for Skills Excellence at Harbourside in Port Talbot, which is great news. Skills and talent, we're now up to 25 pilot projects. In addition, there are 4 apprenticeship and skill development projects, which have now been approved by the Regional Learning Skills Partnership Board. Pentre Owl, as I said, the finance moved from green to amber, but that will be closely monitored by Carmarthenshire Council. And Canolfan, for those who have had been fortunate enough to go down to visit the Zone 1 Canolfan Centre. You can see John nodding, so John and Councillor Stewart were also down there recently. That is programmed for the summer. We're yet to get an exact date because obviously it's a bit of a moving feast, but during the summer, the leisure facilities will start opening, and then there will be a phased opening of other aspects of the Zone 1 Canolfan building then throughout this financial year. If I move on to waterfront, so the 3 areas are the hotel. First of all, the heads of terms of the preferred hotel have been agreed in principle, so subject to confirmation of funding, terms and due diligence, that information will start dripping through in the next few months. 71 and 72 Kingsway, and again, a few people on the call were at the launch event last week on the 3rd of July. So the First Minister was there to be part of that opening ceremony. And obviously the tenancy is starting to come through the pipeline for the Kingsway. Sticking with waterfront, you got the Innovation Matrix. That building launched officially earlier this year, around March. That building is now 100% occupied, which is fantastic to see. And again, speaking to University of Wales Trinity St David yesterday, that's going extremely well. Homes as power stations, it's worth noting that the Supply Chain Development Fund, the expressions of interest have been received, and now there are several applicants who are invited for full application. So hopefully we'll start seeing that again come through the pipeline. Pembroke Marine, if you note in the pack, they always provide lots of updates on various grants and activity that they're doing around berthing and delivery, deployment, etc. So there's a whole host of things. I'm not going to go through each one of those. They have introduced a new risk, and that is Pembroke Marine not currently having a senior responsible owner. But I'm going to meet with Pembrokeshire Council hopefully today and in coming weeks to sort that out. And also identify a coordinator role to support the project. The only area I'd like to cover specifically is the Pembroke Dock infrastructure on it. So there's a transport corridor. It's called Lot 3. So they're currently, as in the Port Authority, are currently looking at what the options are and what industry need is to take that Lot 3 forward. So that will hopefully come through in the next few months. And then I think finally, Campus's project. The next agenda item, Chair, is a change notification or change request, sorry. I think Keith Lloyd and Claire Henson are on the call, so I'm not going to cover that off. But Sketty Lane, the planning has been submitted to Council, and we are awaiting confirmation of the planning decision. We're hoping it will be this month, but that's still outstanding as of last week. So, Chair, that is a very high-level canter through the 9 projects and programmes, or most of them. and I'm happy to take any questions or if anybody would like to add anything to what I've said.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thanks for that. Again, some good milestones again hit this this month or this quarter, and again, we continue to see stuff delivered. Really good news as well on the tenancies. Again, congratulations to Carmarthenshire on the work of Pentrawl as well. That's motoring ahead. So I think we should be really happy that the progress is continuing. We're starting to see not just the projects completed, but actually them having that economic impact in terms of job creation, businesses moving in and growing within a region, which is exactly what we wanted to see. So, no, thank you for that, John. That's really helpful. Any comments, questions to John on any of the items? If not, thank you for that, John. And as you referenced, we've got Keith with us on the next item for the campus's change request. So with that, colleagues, we'll note the update, I believe, on this one for the report and move on then to campus's change request, and welcome Keith to take us through this item.
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate your time today. I'm very grateful to Claire Henson and the team who have prepared the paperwork that you've got in front of you today. Just a very quick reminder, the campus's project is led by Swansea University, and the main partners are the council and our 2 regional health boards. And we work closely with a number of other City Deal projects too. It builds on our track record with the Institute of Life Science in terms of jobs and wealth creation. And we're now seeking to integrate that life sciences and med tech together with sports tech and well-being to enhance the well-being of our regional population and generate economic growth and jobs creation in the region and to attract significant inward investment. We're seeking endorsement from Joint Committee for a change request, basically relocating the business-facing space that we originally proposed at Morriston Hospital, which was one of the outputs, to the new build at Sketty Lane, which is also one of the outputs. To give the committee some assurance, the change request only concerns phase 1 outputs, which are about square meterage. The planning for Morriston Access Road to unlock phase 2 of the project is unchanged, and the proposed phase 1 outputs, the proposed phase 2 outputs and deliverables and outcomes remain unchanged. So they're about creation of a sports park for public and private investment and use down here at Sketty Lane, creation of an innovation park up at Morriston, that remains unchanged. And all the deliverables around jobs creation, contribution to GVA, skills, circular economy remain essentially unchanged. So it's simply about where we deliver it, and that reflects where we are in the life of the project and changes that have happened since. In case I've forgotten anything, I'll just look to Claire to see if there are any other things that she would want to raise at this time before we open it up for questions. Claire.
Thanks, Keith. I don't think there's anything additional. I think all the information regarding costs and how we kind of explored the different options that we had with our colleagues within the health board are probably in the paper. But as Keith says, happy to answer any specific questions.
And just finally to add, very helpful presentation to Programme Board recently. I'm grateful for the support from the council and from the health board. So that's very greatly appreciated.
No problem. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Claire. I'll go to Martin next and then open it up for comments, questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As Keith said, we had a presentation on this. I just wanted, for the record, to confirm that the council, obviously as the sort of lead local authority on this scheme, is more than happy to support the change request. There may be some changes in documentation that need to be followed, but we're comfortable with that. And we've spoken to both our Section 151 and monitoring officer, and we think we can progress that quite swiftly. So, yeah, just want to echo the support for the scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Thank you, Martin. Okay, go to Steve next. Steve Hunt. Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I don't know if I've asked this before. This exciting project, and all need to support it. Because I say new now, but I've been here 3 years, I suppose, but it's still getting the head round with the city deal and all the projects started a very long time ago. There's £50 million investment from the city deal into this project. Was this part of the original projects, or has this been added on during the life of the city deal projects? Because I just wonder where that money was. That money allocated for this originally, or if not, where did it come from? As the 15 million from the city deal? That's all really.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So Steve, yeah, I'll be corrected, but I believe it's original project. It's been there since the start, so it's been one of the original allocations. Okay, John.
Just to say that I work closely with the team to help shape the change request, and I've flagged it with the government's chair, both UK and Welsh government, and they're happy at a regional level for us to do an approval on the change request, because it only affects the outputs and how we deliver, as Keith has just outlined, not what we'll be delivering in terms of the outcome and impact of the campuses project. So I thought it's worth sharing that with the committee members.
Yeah, thank you, John. That's helpful. So again, colleagues, we've had the rationale for the change. Martin said the council is supportive, which we are. Welsh and UK governments are supportive. As I said, it doesn't change the overall deliverables, but it does change how we get there. And again, given that we are some 7 years on from the original view of this, we have to make sure that we continually update and make sure that what we're delivering and how we're delivering it remains sensible and appropriate, and that's what this, I believe, change request does. So again, from my position, leader of council rather than chair of the committee, I'm also supportive of this this change. So I'm happy to move this one, colleagues. Could I look for a seconder, please? Thank you, Darren. Any other comments or questions on this one then before we go to the vote? No. Okay. If I could ask you all then to show if you're in favour, please. Thank you very much, colleagues. That is approved. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Claire. I appreciate your input today. On then to item 9, which is the pre-audit statement of accounts. And welcome, Stephen Aldred-Jones. Stephen.
Yep. Hi. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So the pre-audit statement of accounts for 24-25 is attached on the Appendix A. I think that's 122 of the report pack. So for some context, Carmarthenshire County Council, as the accountable body, is responsible for the financial stewardship of the city deal, and it's the 5th year the Joint Committee has had to compile a statement of accounts. So this pre-audit statement is currently being audited by Audit Wales in line with a detailed audit plan, and any amendments will be noted in the ISA 260 upon completion later this year. So as you can see, the report is very comprehensive, so I'll highlight the few of the main areas today. So I start by drawing your attention to page 7 of the statement, that's 128. We can see the overall investment position of the portfolio. So now it's now showing 1.374 billion over the lifetime of the portfolio. So this compares really well with the portfolio budget, where it's showing an additional 98 million. And some of this, large part of this is due to the digital infrastructure project, which Rebecca presented on earlier. So digital is showing an additional 72 million investment, and this is mainly due to the additional private sector investment leveraged by the project. Pembroke Dock Marine, there's an additional 3 million due to the Meath private sector investment. Then again, Pentre Owl, an additional 12 million. I think John touched on this earlier, and then the support in innovation and low carbon growth has an additional 11 million investment. 8.2 million of this is due to the government's Tata Transition Fund. On page 14 of the statement, that's 135 of the report pack, we see the outturn position of the Joint Committee. You can see this is a deficit of 439,000 for the year, and this is mainly due to the timing issue of the top slice. So this is the grants we paid out, we top sliced part of that, so it's only a timing issue. So the city deal, we actually received in 24-25 £34 million of the grant award. So this is an increase of 10.9 million due to the UK government grant front loading some of its remaining grant. And then of this, we paid out to partners 22.3 million. So at the year end, this increased our reserve position. At the start of the year, it was 54.4 million, and then this increased to 56.6 due to the additional 11 million we hadn't paid out in the year. So the actual main body of the financial statements starts on page 28 of the statement, or 147 of the report pack. And we start with the comprehensive income and expenditure statement. So this shows all the income and expenditure received and incurred by the joint committee through the year. And this shows a surplus of the 11.2, which ties up to the figures I just said, between the difference between the grants received and paid out. And then moving on to balance sheet on page 29, this shows our total reserves. But also includes the short-term debtors. There's a figure in there of 155,000. But this is mainly due to the top slicing of the partners, which for the quarter four, we didn't receive all quarter four claims in before the end of the financial year. So this 155 refers to the 3.9 million in the creditors. Try not to get too technical. So yes, it all ties up to the quarter four claims, which are outstanding. There's a cash flow statement on page 30, which shows how cash and cash equivalents were generated and applied by the joint committee. But there's the notes to the account, probably the more interesting one. It allows us to compare the previous year's figures to the 24-25 figures. So I'll just go through a few of those. So these start on page 31 of the statement. So this note 1 shows the employee costs of the portfolio management office. You'll notice that 24-25 was lower than 23-24, but that's due to the 2 vacancies being within the team. And those vacancies were one of them was for the entire year and the other one was for the vast majority of the year. As you're probably aware, the POMO operate from the beacon. So note 2 shows the operating costs of using the room at the beacon. Note 4, supplies and services. There's a line within this called projects and activities, and we use that line to summarize or to contain the interest we earn on the City Deal balance, which we then pay out to the partners. So for 24-25, we had £2.55 million worth of earned interest, and that compares to the previous year's 2.77. It's slightly lower because interest rates have, as you probably know, been dropping throughout the year. Note 6, sorry, bear with me. Income. So the top slide, the partnership contributions of 50k per partner came to an end in 22-23. So we now purely reliant on the top slice contributions from the partners to fund the joint committee and the POMO. So due to timing issues, as I mentioned earlier, of the grant expenditure, the top slice was lower than the previous year. Note 7 is quite an interesting one. We can see it discloses the material transactions between the partners of City Deal. So that's quite an interesting one. You can see with each of the partners how much money they basically received from the City Deal. Debtors in note 9, as I mentioned, the 155k figure comes from the top slice to local authorities, or from the local authorities rather. And then creditors in note 12 relates to the £3.9 million outstanding quarter four claims. There were some small short-term creditors. They mainly to do with invoices at year end, including the Audit Wales invoices. Note 13, usable reserves. So as I said, we had a deficit of £439,000 at year end, but we did have a brought forward credit balance, I think 183,000. So we are in a shortfall position at year end when you offset those to be 256k at year end. So this is again purely time issue of the top slice being generated, and this will be offset as project partners spend and receive their grant award in the years going forward. So after the notes, then we move on to the annual governance statement. That's on page 40 of the statement. So, as you know, the Joint Committee is responsible for ensuring that its business is conducted in accordance with law and proper standards. It must also ensure that public money is safeguarded and properly accounted for. So this annual governance statement details how this is achieved and the responsibilities of the key roles within it. And then finally, there's an internal audit. There's the scope. You can see the scope and results of the internal audit conducted on page 54 of the statement. And the audit concluded with the audit assurance rating of substantial. So that was the main points I wanted to highlight, Chair. I'm just open for any questions.
Okay, many thanks, Stephen, for that run through. Colleagues, any questions or comments to Stephen on the report? If not, then on your behalf, Stephen, I'm happy to move that. Could I ask for a seconder, please? Yeah, thank you, John. This one obviously is for approval. So if I could ask you to show if you're in agreement, please. Thank you very much. We'll move on then to, thank you, Stephen. We'll move on then to the SBCD portfolio annual report and ask John to come back in on this one.
Thanks, Chair. So for all committee members, this is the 5th iteration of our annual report. As it suggests in the title, it does come out annually. So we brought this one forward by probably a couple of months from last year, so that's really good because it's more timely. But the annual report is the opportunity to celebrate the achievements and key milestones, particularly between April 24 and March 25. So that's largely what's highlighted. But it also gives us the opportunity to reinforce the importance and the key messages of the City deal, both to our region and economy, and provide insights of what happened during the financial year. So if you recall, the contents and wording were approved back in May. This is now putting it into a nice digital glossy document that we can put on our website, subject to approval by the board today. And we'll publicise it through our networks. But it will be available to be downloaded, and there will be an accessible version of this available, and a English and a separate Welsh version. Chair, I'll take a few kind of key points to draw your attention to in the document. It is a lengthy document. It's probably about 50 odd pages long, but it contains project updates, as I said, broken down by project, and it shows key highlights and milestones of what's happened, but also what we're going to achieve in this financial year as well. So you can have a look at those to see what should be delivered in 25-26. What we've tried to do this time around is contain, we'll put across the document more interactive links. So we're using our Swansea Bay City Deal website more, so that the reader can hopefully move a bit quicker and freer through the report instead of getting bogged down with detail. But that detail is available on the website. And there's various QR codes so that people can scan those if they have a mobile device or if they want to use their desktop to follow through to those links on that website. So page 5 is probably worth highlighting to the board. There are benefits to date across the portfolio. Lots of them are at portfolio level, but we've also highlighted some of the key milestones, if you like, and achievements of some projects. What we've incorporated this year, as we did last year, was a case study on each project and program. So we title those In Focus. So hopefully that will give you a bit of flavour as to what, instead of, as Councillor Hunt said earlier on, rather than numbers, it actually brings it to life, hopefully a little bit more. We've also put on this version featured page around tenants. So we now have over 40 tenants in the City Deal infrastructure across the region. So that is highlighted there. That number is growing, so we need to make sure that our website reflects that growing number of tenants. And it's probably worth noting, we call them tenants in this, but they're probably partners to a lot of our lead delivery organisations. So it's not just about renting space, it's about how we work together for the better of the economy. So a couple of In Focus pieces. One is on the web page, new website for City Deal, that's on page 57. And within that, then we have just launched an animation, and that is about what is City Deal and how can it benefit me as a resident or as a business in the region. So again, I'd urge you to go and have a look at that on our website. And Chair, there's lots of other information in there, but in terms of highlights, some of it is reflected in what I said for quarter 4, but as I said, it's throughout the whole financial year of 24-25. So hopefully that gives you a flavour of what we have presented to board.
Yeah, thank you, John. And of course, we saw the draft earlier this year on this one, didn't we? So, yeah, very grateful for you bringing this back and for the highlights you've outlined there. I'm sure members will be taking a look at those relevant parts if they haven't already. I'm happy to move that on your behalf. Could I ask for a seconder, please? Thank you, Darren. Any final comments or questions to John on the report? If not, could I ask colleagues to show if they're in favour? Oh, sorry, John, you can see your hand's gone up. Apologies.
No, it's fine. It's nothing. It's more of sharing our thanks, if you like, to Heidi Harris for collating the report, but also the projects, because what they provide in terms of the updates and the engagement, the collation of that takes some time. So I just wanted to highlight the gratitude to Heidi and the projects and programs. Thanks,
Yeah,
Chair.
absolutely, John, and please take our thanks back to Heidi and the teams for the work that's been undertaken on behalf of the Joint Committee. So thank you very much for that. Colleagues, thank you for approving that report. We'll now allow colleagues from the PMO to leave before we take the last item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Our final item for today, which is the future role of the Programme and Portfolio Management Office. Can I welcome Debbie Smith to take us through this item?
I think, Chair, Paul Thomas is here to take us through the item. Is that right, Paul? Are you leading on this?
Apologies.
No, I'm very happy, Chair, to do it.
Yeah, Paul, apologies. I had Debbie down on my my agenda, but yeah, by all means, Paul, off you go.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Paul Thomas. I'm Assistant Chief Executive at Carmarthenshire. And what I'm going to do is just try and give you sort of a structured approach in terms of why we've done this review and what we found. So the reason why we did the review is this was a decision that this committee commissioned a review going back to February 25. Largely due to the funding concerns beyond 2025. So as a result of that, we quickly established an officer project team that included myself as the lead officer, Debbie as the monitoring officer for Swansea Bay City Deal, Craig Griffiths, the monitoring officer for CJC, and also Chris Moore, the Section 151 officer. So the work in terms of consultation and analysis, I was ably assisted by my business and project manager, Cheryl Reynolds, who's also here today. Okay, so the key considerations that we looked at, this was self-evident very quickly. Point one is the reducing funding position. We also looked at the governance structures. And I think the view was that the support requirements of the deal going forward, as well as its strategic alignment with CJC and the regional objectives, were also very important. But during those discussions, the review also explored the future demands and support and requirements of the CJC, including officer and elected member capacity and the role of the SRO. I mean, that was a consistent consideration going through. So in terms of our approach then, how do we come to this assumption and who do we speak to? The first discussion was actually with John Burns as the programme director. We also spoke with the 4 council leaders, the 4 chief executives, the 4 directors of regeneration, all the heads of service with regeneration responsibility. It wasn't just them, it was also their project leads and the managers within regeneration, as well as the chair of the Economic Strategy Board. Once we did that, we then, more out of courtesy, I suppose, but we did take soundings from both UK and Welsh governments on the potential options. So that was really important. Right, cutting to the findings then. So in terms of what we found, and this was a clear message from everybody we spoke to, if I'm being honest about it, what I will say is that it was quite clear that the work of the POMO was really valued by everybody we spoke to. But people told us that they have been instrumental in bringing strong governance to the delivery of the programme,
by supporting the development and approval of business cases, engaging key stakeholders through communications and marketing activities, coordinating progress reports to the Joint Committee and the Programme Board, coordinating progress reports to the sponsoring departments of UK and Welsh Government, and supporting the work of the Economic Strategy Board. Where we're at in terms of the timeline here, and I'm speaking to the converted, I'm sure, but because we are now 7 years in to a 15-year programme, really, and most of the project programmes are now at various stages, the support required from the POMO has changed. That became self-evident and will continue to change as the projects close. Additionally, what we also know, and again, a resounding message from all we spoke to, is that the CJC, the workload of that body is increasing. And if I could be as direct as to say, with very little support in place. And we were conscious that the CJC has statutory duties to produce regional transport plans, strategic development plans. It also has broad powers to promote economic well-being, but it has the same geographic footprint as the Swansea Bay City deal. And I think based on what we heard, there is evidence of overlap between City Deal and the work that is evolving and continues to evolve with CJC. And predominantly, there was really strong feedback from the directors and the project leads in that respect. So having said all of that, in summary, where we're at is we are in a situation where, again, quite directly, we have insufficient funding to support the POMO in its current format. We have changing support requirements from the deal's point of view, and we also have this increasing workload from a CJC perspective. And again, it is clear from the people affected, everybody in fairness, and to John's team as well, they are keen to reduce the time they are committing to attending meetings, and work has happened to try and reduce that, providing the same information for two different bodies. Okay, so having said all of that, what does that translate into? Well, fundamentally it translates into three options. So in the report in front of you, we put forward the three options. The first option is status quo. We do nothing. So we continue the current structure with a funding gap that will need to be addressed. And I'm sure if Chris Moore was here today, he had quite a lot to say about it, but that isn't contained in the report. So option one then, if the current structure and arrangements were to be continued, the remaining top sites available would be enough to run POMO and the Joint Committee until April 27. But this would have an impact on the financial resources available for the delivery of projects. So discussions with stakeholders, particularly those discussions with both UK and Welsh governments, they really didn't see this as a viable option going forward. But nonetheless, it is an option that needs to be considered. So that is option one. Option two is that POMO closes with all that that brings, and then the residual functions transfer to the four local authorities. Clearly, this option would reduce costs, but there is quite a significant risk that we would lose regional oversight and collaboration that the POMO has helped to foster. And again, this is quite an important point that we discussed with John's team. They've worked damn hard to deliver what they're doing, and we can't lose that impetus, in my view. So again, on option two, in discussions with both UK and Welsh governments, they didn't support this as a viable option moving forward, and their concerns were around what they're expecting is the assurance to support this regional oversight, if I can explain it like that. And it's not in the spirit of what the CGC has been set up or has been established to do. Option three then is that POMO is restructured and incorporated into the CJC. Again, listening to what's been said, we've condensed this into a few bullet points. This option would reduce duplication, and I don't think there was any real argument on that. And it certainly would help to align regional efforts. It reduces costs, as I said, but it would also potentially solve the problem of an increasing CJC workload. And again, that was quite a fundamental factor that everybody contributed to. So this increasing workload would require changing support from a deal point of view. And as we all are aware, if you look at what happened in Cardiff and North Wales, they've already gone down this route. Now, that said, we've got to have something which works for us as well. But going back to the dialogue we've had with both UK and Welsh governments, they both felt that this was the most sensible approach given the funding and capacity challenges. So what the report is recommending is that the Joint Committee looks at option 3 and that further work subject to agreement with CJC is undertaken to establish a few things. So the level of support skills required by the CJC moving forward and the residual report required by the deal. Because, you know, in terms of talking to John and his team, there is still quite a lot of work that needs to be delivered. But looking at option 3, you know, we need to come up and with a support structure that meets the needs of the region itself. We're also recommending that the role of the SRO for the deal is reassigned to an appropriate senior officer. So that, Chair, is a brief overview of where we are, what we found, and the options going forward, including a preferred option. My final comment is, I'm sure Debbie may be better placed than me on this, but I'm going to have a go at it. What are the next steps? If you agree to explore option 3 in principle today, and it is in principle, then the 4 local authorities will need to agree this approach. So what we're recommending, purely because there are no increased funding implications, but it's the respective executive boards, cabinet and full councils will need to be involved in this. So I think I've covered the next steps, Debbie, and I'm quite happy to stand corrected if I've not got this exactly right. I think I have. So, Chair, that's it in a nutshell from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Debbie, before I sort of bring people in for comment and questions, anything you wanted to add?
Only just to confirm, that Paul's summarised the report and the options available. And whilst, if the Joint Committee goes with option 3, and whilst the detailed costs and needs of the CJC and the city deal going forward, whilst those are finalised, we can do the work around aligning the governance arrangements, because that doesn't really impact on the resources of the POMO. I think everybody's flagged up with Paul and those doing the review that it would be a good idea to align those governance arrangements, and that can be done between now and when the final report comes back. And that will involve, as Paul says, reports to each of the constituent authorities, cabinets and council, because those alignments are around the Joint Committee functions, the ESB functions and the joint scrutiny functions. Some of those would have to go to Cabinet. The joint scrutiny changes would have to go to Council. So Craig Griffiths in Neath Talbot is preparing those reports, Chair, so that we're all taking the same reports to our respective executive boards.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Paul. If I begin, then I think, look, you've articulated the fact that we have 3 options, but in reality, 2 of those options are ones that would not move us forward and would probably not be appropriate for where we currently are. So, you know, option 1 and option 2 for me are ones that I can't see how we could pursue either of those. Option 3 as a preferred option seems very sensible. Look, it's no reflection on the PMO if we do this. They have done an excellent job, but we are at a point now whereby a lot of what they were there to oversee is in delivery, or some of those projects are actually complete. That's not to say, as has been rightly flagged, that we've still got a number of years to run on the city deal, and that would require that ongoing monitoring and support, but that can be done from within the CJC structures. So again, a sensible set of moves there. And again, from me, anything that we can do, I'm sure this is shared across all of us, anything we can do to bring together the governance structures and save us having to have separate duplicate meetings for things that are pretty much aligned would be appreciated by everyone, I think. So direction of travel, absolutely right. I think it gives us the opportunity to streamline, to move forward, to tidy up the governance. I think it is the right thing for us. I know the North and Southeast have made similar decisions, but I think it's also the right decision for us. And I'm fully support option 3. But open it up for my colleagues to make comments or questions. John?
Yeah, just a quick comment, Chair. Yeah, obviously supportive from my side of things as well. Just in terms then of what the constituent authorities need to do, and I noted that Debbie said that you're preparing a sort of almost like a standard report for the various executives cabinet. I think that makes sense. Am I right in assuming then that that won't then get reported to the various executive boards, stroke cabinet, stroke council, until the extra bit of work has been done on how this is all going to work out? Is that the sort of timescale? Because looking at, sorry, I'm probably not explaining myself correctly, but looking at the reports here, we're talking about, sorry, the recommendations. Recommendation 1 approves and commissions further development of option 3, and then recommendation 2 approves the proposal of work commences by the constituent councils. But I'm assuming nothing gets reported to constituent councils until that work associated with recommendation 1 has been completed.
The report, sorry, Chair, do you want me to respond to that now? Yes, the report envisages, Councillor Harvey, that we can do that alignment work now, and there is nothing really stopping us proceeding with that, because it is a separate piece of work to the further work that needs to be done on the resources needed. And I think everybody was highlighting to Paul that governance work should crack, we should crack on with that governance work and do that. Now, it's going to take a little bit of time because it needs a report going to, as I say, to cabinets and to council. And then it has to go back to joint committee for final approval. Because the way the joint committee agreement is structured, certain matters are reserved to each of the councils. And this is one of those matters which is reserved. So it has to go back to the constituent authorities. They have to make the decision. Then it has to go back to the joint committee for final approval. But that could be done irrespective of what decision is made on the resources. Because I think the resources are going to be needed, whatever the governance structure looks like. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, it does. Through you, Chair. Thanks, Debbie. I'm clear in my head now. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and just for colleagues' awareness, I think that's one of the things that I hope we can try and improve, is having a governance process which doesn't need us to refer back constantly to our councils for decisions, because that can in of itself cause huge delays. When we're all relatively in violent agreement at the joint committee, then taking amending reports back through our councils, which we then agree and then bring back. So if there's anything we can do to make that process more manageable, I think that we should take the opportunity to do that and update our governance. Any other comments on this item? If not, I'm happy to formally move. Could I ask for a formal seconder, please? Thank you, John. And again, if there is no comments, could I ask colleagues to show if they're in approval that we go for the preferred option 3? Thank you very much. So that is approved, and I believe that's our last item for today, colleagues. So thank you all very much for your attendance. Great to see you all this morning in several meetings. Look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care, folks. Declare the meeting closed.
Thanks. Thank you.
Good.
Bravo.
Hara.